Good evening. My name is Katie Mangan, and I'm here to welcome you to the Do Tell Story Swap of Sonoma County. We have a few tellers lined up, and we have a good evening in front of us. We'll be telling stories until about maybe 8 o'clock, when we'll take a short break, and we'll have announcements and a prompt, a question that will give us an insight into ourselves and who we are. So the stories, as you know, are to be told and not read. And I think we are ready to go. So our first teller tonight is Vicki Ness, and Vicki Ness is also our technical director. So thank you, Vicki.
One thing I would like to ask Katie, if you will, if somebody enters the waiting room, will you turn it on while I'm telling?
Turn what on?
If somebody enters the waiting room, will
Yeah,
you
yeah, yeah, I'm doing that. Yeah,
while I'm telling? That's all.
of course. Absolutely.
Okay. Well, unlike what everybody was saying about an old story, this is a brand new story. And yeah, well, there it is. Brand new stories are what they are. So Kyrie was looking through kimono patterns. They were woodblock prints on fabric attached to boards, large boards that were hinged in the middle so that she could turn the boards like pages of an enormous book. Why, this one here, oh my goodness, it was beautiful. It was a deep green field with silver needles of rain pouring down, and undisturbed by it all, floating in the storm, were perfect yellow iris here and there. And this one over here, why, it was the outline of bunnies, bunnies leaping over a dawn, the rosy dawn, and drawings of little bunnies leaping over the dawn. This one was a blue gingham bunny, and that one was a flowered bunny, and this one was a polka dot bunny, bunnies leaping over the dawn. She turned the next page, and there was, oh, a breeze blowing that looked like a ribbon through a garden of bright yellow chrysanthemums, each of the spatulate petals opening out against a deep burgundy ground. Oh, it was stunning. And then this one over here, why, this was cranes flying against a smoky blue background with just the ghost of mountains rising up in the back, and the cranes and cranes. It was a repeating pattern of beauty and mystery and elegance. And that's the one she wanted. You see, Carrie was a very busy woman. She felt like the claws of her everyday living between her community and her friends and her family and her work put her like a rag doll on a spin cycle of a dryer. She could hardly tell what was going on. She was so busy until she landed at the end of the day, exhausted and kind of beetle brained. And every single year, she missed the Uban Festival. The Uban Festival happens in August, and it's a way of honoring your ancestors, much like Day of the Dead or All Souls Day. And her temple featured an Oban festival every single August at night. And it never failed that either she was doing dishes and tired, or helping the kids with homework or something. And sometimes she was just slouched on the sofa watching Netflix when the Oban festival went on. This time it wasn't going to happen that way. So she bought herself a yukata. A yukata is like a kimono, but it's made of summer weight cotton, and it's much more informal, not to mention cheaper. But she figured if she bought the robe for the festival, then she would have to make it. And not only that, she was going to go early and help to set it up. So, having chosen her pattern, she ordered her yukata. Well, the day before the festival, the box came, and she tore it open and pushed aside the tissue, and there it was. Oh, it was ugly. What was it? It wasn't the pattern she asked for. She held it up. It was pale yellow with what looked like Cheerios spilled here and there. And It looked like somebody spilled Cheerios on a kitchen counter. It was ugly. And wait, inside each of the Cheerios was a Hello Kitty. It was ugly. It was stupid looking. That wasn't the pattern she wanted. It was awful. And she was horrified until her husband pragmatically pointed out, well, the festival is tomorrow. You really don't have much of a choice. Why don't you wear it? And then we'll settle with the company the next day. Fine. Well, the next day came and she put on the dreaded ugly robe and she went to the temple early. And with the ladies in the temple, they went into the kitchen and they started cooking up a storm. Oh, wonderful delicacies so that everybody who came to the festival would have something to eat. While the men raised up the multicolored lanterns with flickering candles in them. They raised them up on ropes, crisscrossing each other. And while the ladies hauled the old folding chairs out of the closet, dragging them to the grass to set them up so people could sit down, the men put together a stage of sorts for the drummers. And when they were through, here came the people. And oh, everybody had such a wonderful time. Everybody was talking and greeting friends and family, and kids were running around, and people were eating the delicacies and laughing and enjoying a beautiful warm night. And then a sound of a woman singing, like a thread floating through a breeze, just rising, falling, rising, rising, falling. And people grew quieter. And then the drums started. And the people got into their formation, into a line, men, women, and children. They snapped open their fans, they clapped their hands, and they did their 5-step dance and 5-step dance with their eyes half lidded as though they were looking into the near distance of some strange land, dancing in a line to the music. And the drums kept them moving, moving in unison. And under the full moon of a warm August night, oh, they looked like a serpent shining in the moonlight and the lantern light, like some mythical creature that could move between the world of the dead and the world of the living. And the people communed as they danced and moved so elegantly. And then the voice died back and the drums stopped. And the murmur rose up, and people very quietly began to look for car keys and purses and toddlers, and they talked, and there was quiet laughter. But people were tired. It was a Sunday night, and people had to go to work the next day. So slowly but surely, out in the dusty parking lot, the headlights blinked on, and like lumbering monsters, they disappeared in the dark. Down the dust, leaving only taillights behind and gone. Leaving the temple ladies and gentlemen to clean up. And clean up they did. They cleaned up the kitchen and they dragged the folding chairs back and they brought down the lanterns and put out the candles and moved the drums and until everything was finished and it was late at night. Well, when Curry and her husband came home, she took off the robe and tossed it on the bed and went into the bathroom. And then she came out of the bathroom, wiping her face with a cosmetic towel, looking at her husband. And he was standing at the foot of the bed, and he had spread out the robe with the arms wide open and flat down. And she came and stood next to him and looked down at the ugly thing. It was not only ugly, it was stained. It twice as ugly. It was really ugly. And before she could say anything, he stood up straighter and then bent down and pointed and he said, "Look at that grass stain. You know, you got that when that little girl fell down face first into the grass and she was crying because her silk kimono was messed up and you bent down and you picked her up and you told her she was beautiful and she believed you and she ran off laughing. That's what that stain is from." And this one, well, that's cooking oil and sauce from when you and all the ladies determined to feed every single person who showed up. And this cosmetic stain, that has to be your crazy auntie who gives everybody bear hugs. And this dirt, oh, that's from hauling those dirty old chairs around. That was hard work. And this, and he pointed down to the grime on the hem. He said, you know, that's just dust that gets stirred up. It happens when you join the dance. And you joined the dance. That's what happens. And he looked at it again. And he said, I think it might be the most beautiful pattern I saw tonight. It's a pattern of community. It's a pattern of an evening well lived. I like it very much, he said. And he went into the bathroom, leaving her alone with the dreaded robe. Looking down on it, of course, her first thought was, it's going into the washing machine with a half a bottle of stain release. But she also thought, I'm going to hang it up with the arms outstretched, so that before the day grabbed her like the claw of an eagle and sent her flying through the day, she would see that pattern of chaotic and messy, and that pattern would remind her of community, of gentleness, of love, of honor and tradition, and all of it flowering under a warm August night. The pattern of the miracle of community that she wanted to remember for just a little bit longer. Thank you.
Oh, Vicky, that was just wonderful. I mean, we were there at the ceremony and also there at the end when her husband was looking at the robe. I mean, it was just so beautifully told.
Thank you.
The beginning to the end, just such a complete story. Lovely. Oh, you have to keep that one. That's so gorgeous. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to welcome Rose Owens to the stage. Welcome, Rose. Please tell us your story.
Okay, I would like to share the story of the magic brush, an old folk tale from China. Long, long ago, so long ago that if I had been there then, I wouldn't be here now to tell you this story. There was a poor orphan boy, Malin, who lived in a little hut at the edge of the forest. And every day Malin went into the forest and he gathered sticks and wood, and he took them to the market and he sold them for a little bit of money and buy food. And in this way he lived and had a meager existence. Now one day there came to the village a famous artist, and the famous artist said, I will teach your sons how to paint. And the people in the village thought this was a good idea, and so an art school was begun. Now Malin had a dream. He wanted to learn how to draw and paint the beautiful things he saw in the forest each day. And so he went to the art teacher and he said, honored sir, I will clean your house. I will cook your meals. I will do your laundry. I will bring you wood for your fire, if you will teach me how to draw, how to paint. And the artist looked at him and said, go away. I do not teach poor orphan boys. Malin's head hung low as he went back to the forest. And then he thought, I will teach myself. And so there by the pond in the forest, he spread and smoothed out the sand, and he picked up a stick and he thought, what should I draw first? And while he was thinking, he watched a fish that came jumping out of the water, and it orched down into the water again. And he thought, I will draw a fish. Now, the first fish that he drew was not very good. But day by day he practiced, and day by day he got better. And he drew the fish, and he drew the squirrels, and he drew the birds, all the beautiful things he saw in the forest, and the flowers. And it got so that the very animals in the forest would gather around him and watch as he painted and drew. And when he left, they would walk around the outside so as not to destroy his drawings. Now, one day he got up extra early so that he would have more time to practice. And he was very tired, and he leaned his head back and he went to sleep. And into his dreaming there came an old Chinese gentleman with a long white beard and a green brocade robe. And the Chinese gentleman said, Marlene, you have desired to paint. You've desired to draw, and that is good. I give you a magic brush. Promise me that you will use it to paint for the good of the people. Marlene woke up. Oh, the brush, it was real. And he gathered up his wood and he went to the marketplace, and he did not buy food, but he bought rice paper and he bought ink. And he went back to his house and he spread out the rice paper and he put a bowl of water beside it, and he thought, what shall I draw first? And he thought, I will paint a fish, the first thing that I ever learned how to do. And so he started to paint, and he painted the head and he painted the eyes and he painted the scales and the gills and he painted the tail. And as he finished the last stroke of the tail, the fish slid off the paper and into the bowl of water. For that was the music of the magic of the brush. Whatever Marlene finished became real. After that, life became wonderful for Marlene. He painted fruit, he painted vegetables, he painted wonderful things to eat. But he remembered the promise he had made. And as he went through the village, he looked around to see what might be for the good of the people. He saw the women carrying big jugs of water on their head a long, long way from the river. And he painted a well in the middle of the village where they could come and dip in their buckets in water. He saw the men who had big yokes with water at each end, and they carried them all the way up the steep, steep path from the river to the top of the cliff, and then to water their crops. And he painted a water wheel that would go down and bring the water up to the top, and their life was easier for them. He saw a man pulling a plow himself, and he painted a water buffalo, and life in the village was good. But as happens, word spread. Have you heard about Marlene? Marlene has a magic brush. Whatever he paints becomes real. And the word traveled all the way to the emperor. And the emperor said, if Marlene has a magic brush, he should paint for me. Stand for Marlene. Now, Marlene did not wish to go, but you do not say no to the emperor. And so he appeared before the emperor. Your Excellency, Marlene, I want you to paint me a golden dragon. Marlene had to think about this. Your Excellency, I promised the old gentleman who gave me my brush that I would paint for the good of the people. And I do not see that a golden brush is for the good of the people. And the emperor was angry, and he had Marlene cast into prison, and he grabbed the brush. He said, I will paint for myself. And he dipped the brush into the golden ink, and he began to paint, and what appeared on the paper did not look like a golden dragon. It looked a little bit like a stunted rooster. And when he finished the last stroke, it leaped off the page, pecked the emperor on the nose, and went squawking into the forest. Then the emperor knew that he needed to have Marlene. And so he said for him, and he said, Marlene, I was wrong. Of course you must paint for the good of the people. He said, do you see out there the dried up ground where the lake used to be? Would it not be for the good of the people if there were water there, that my people could walk beside the water at the end of the day and feel relaxed and calm? And Marlene thought about it. Yes, a lake could be for the good of the people. And so he took his brush and he began to paint, and he painted the ripples of the water coming in and the waves. And he painted the blue and the sun glistening on the water. And when he finished the last stroke, the water slid off the paper, and there it was. And the people in the evening, when they were tired from a long day of work, walked beside the lake, and it was good. It was good. Then the emperor said, Marlene, there is fish out there in that lake, and my people are hungry. Would it not be for the good of the people if there were a boat that they could go out on the lake and catch those fish? And Marlene thought about it. Yes, that could be for the good of the people. And he began to paint the boat, and he painted the hull, and he painted the railings. And the emperor said, Marlene, My people like beauty. Give it gold trim. Give it red silk sails. And Marlene painted. When he finished the last stroke, the boat slid off the paper and into the lake. And there it was, and it rocked back and forth, to and fro. And the emperor took all of his couriers and marched on board that ship. And the boat rocked to and fro and back and forth. Marlene, Marlene, paint me a wind. Paint me a big wind. And Marlene began to paint. And he began to paint the wind, and there were the storm clouds, and there was the rain. And it was a veritable storm, and when he finished the last stroke and it slid off the paper, the wind caught the sails of the boat and it drove it far, far, far out. So far that it never came back. And then the people needed a new emperor, and they said, Marlene, will you be our emperor? He said, no, I just want to go back home to my village. So they chose another good man to be an emperor, and Marlene went back home to his village. Now, if you should happen to go in the back roads of China, in a far-off place by the edge of a forest, you may see a hut with birds singing in the trees and vines growing around the door and flowers in front of it. And then you will know that you have found the home of Marlene, where he lives and paints for the good of the people. And that is the story of the magic brush.
Wonderful.
Rose, what a beautiful story. I just love all your gestures, and I could see the water. So beautifully told. Thank you so much. Very magical. Perfect. And now we have Meg Brown. Would you like to tell us your story?
I sure would. Wow, that was a great story. I loved it.
Thank you.
Okay. Today, my story is kind of what I like to tell at Halloween. It's not real scary, but it's really fun. And it's called The Widow's Broom. It is by Chris Van Allsburg, who also wrote Jumani and The Polar Express, which became big movies. Must be a very successful guy. But it's a beautiful story anyway. All of his stories are wonderful. Okay. Did you know that a witch's broom does not last forever? No. At first, they're so strong and they can fly so fast that they play with the falcons and the eagles in the sky. But as they grow older and more used, well, sometimes they get slower and they can't even catch up with the geese. And so the witch has to get a new one, and the witch usually knows. However, there are times when the broom just stops working. And when that happens, there's trouble. Well, one night, it was a moonlit, beautiful night, a figure fell from the sky onto the ground in the garden of Minna Shaw's house and farm. And in the morning, when Minna went out to the garden, she found a woman who was bruised and bloody, and there beside her was a broom. And she knew, oh, this was a witch. And even though she was kind of afraid of witches, she had to help the woman. And so she helped her up, and she took her into her cottage and put her into the bed. And all the woman said was, please just draw the curtains. And she curled up in her black cloak and went to sleep. Well, that was fine. Minna went around about her business that day. And in the evening, she sat by the fire and fell asleep. And sometime during that night, the woman got up and she went out and passed the sleeping Minna to the fireplace where the embers had burned down. And she took one in her hand and she went out to the garden. She pulled some twigs and leaves together, and with the embers, she lit a small fire. And she took a hair from her head and she put it in the fire, and it sizzled and blazed blue. And pretty soon, out of the dark sky came another broom and witch, and they came down. The two women had a long palaver, and then they both got on the broom and they went off. Well, the next morning, when Minna went out to her garden to get some strawberries for her breakfast, what should be lying there but a broom? Oh, said Minna, well, that broom looks pretty handy. I mean, it's a nice broom. I could always use another broom. And so she took it and she swept it. She said, oh, this is a good broom. I can keep this. And she put it into her broom closet. Again, she went about her day, and that evening she could hear a tap, tap, tap. She thought, where is that coming from? Oh, it's coming from the broom closet. So she went to the broom closet and she opened it up. And what should happen? But the witch's broom, it came out and it started to sweep the floor. Well, that was okay. And then it swept the next room and the next room, and it swept all the floors in the house, and it swept all the cobwebs off the ceiling, and it just kept sweeping and sweeping. And finally, Minna took it and put it back into the broom closet and went to bed. Well, the next morning, when she was having her breakfast, she again heard tap, tap, tap. It's that broom, she thought. Well, and so she opened the door, it came out, it started sweeping again, and it swept all the floors, and it swept out onto the porch and down into the court, into the foreyard, and it just kept sweeping and sweeping. And finally, Minna said, no, this is a lot of sweeping, but maybe I can teach it to do something else. And so she did. She took the broom and she began to teach it, to feed the chickens and to bring in the cow at night and to chop the wood. All these things that, because she was a widow, she didn't have help to do. So she was very, very pleased. And then in the evening, the broom liked to sit at her piano and play little songs, just one note at a time. And Minna so enjoyed all of this. It was great. Well, Minna had a neighbor, Mr. Spivey, and he lived down the road, and he had 8 sons, and he was a very cranky man. Well, one day, one of his sons saw what this broom was doing, feeding the chickens and bringing the cow in. And he went to his father and he told him what was happening. Mr. Spivey was not happy. And he went straight away to Minna's house and he said, Minna, what is that broom? It is doing all these things that brooms are not supposed to do. It is a wicked, wicked thing. You need to get rid of that broom. Well, Minna said, no, I really need the help. I'm all by myself here. I have so much work to do to keep my farm going. And well, it's helping me so much. I don't think it's wicked at all. I think it's a big help. You should get rid of it, said Mr. Spivey. And he stalked off to his own house. Well, a couple of days later, the broom in its industrious self was down on the road, sweeping the road because he'd swept everything else. And who should come along but 2 of Mr. Spivey's sons and their little dog. They saw the broom and they thought, we can have some fun. And so they began to push it and pull it and just generally make a nuisance of themselves. And well, the broom put up with it for a little while, and then they pushed a little bit too hard and pulled its broom broom straws, and so the broom knocked them both on the head so hard that they fell down onto the road. They said to their little dog, get that broom, get that broom. And the little dog, he jumped up and he grabbed hold of the broomstick, and the broomstick leaned back and threw that dog so hard he fell right into the nearby forest and wasn't seen for quite a while. Well, when the boys ran home with their noggins having been busted and the dog lost, Mr. Spivey was really mad. And so that night, while Minna sat in her nice little house by the fire, she heard a knock on her front door this time. And when she opened it, there was Mr. Spivey, and he had 5 guys with him, and they had a stake and a big roll of rope. And they said, Minna, You must bring that broomstick out here. It is wicked. It is from the devil, and we are going to have to destroy it for your own good. Well, Minna looked at those men and she thought, it's going to be a hard one to win. So she went to the broom closet and she brought out a broom. And she said, now, don't wake it up, because you know what happens, don't wake it up. And so they very gingerly took the broom and they put the rope around the stake. They took it out into the front yard and they pounded it into the ground, and they gathered wood and they set a fire and they burned the broom to ashes. Well, they were very satisfied and off they went. Minna, on the other hand, she was a very clever lady, and she thought. Well, it wasn't but a day later that she came to Mr. Spivey and she said, Mr. Spivey, there's a ghost now. There's a ghost, and it comes out at night and it goes around my house. Have you seen it? Have you seen that ghost? Mr. Spivey said, ghost? No, haven't seen any ghost. Oh, well, okay. I'm sure it's not going to hurt anything. And she went off back home. Well, Mr. Spivey that night, he sat by the window and he looked out. And sure enough, after a while, after it was good and dark, what should come out of the forest but a ghost? And it went around his house, around and around. And suddenly he gave himself a shake and he thought, oh, I must have been asleep. That couldn't have been a ghost. And he went to bed. Well, the next night, he thought, I'm going to see what was going on there. And he again sat at the window and looked out. And there, when it was good and dark, came a ghost. And it began to circle around his house, circle around and a little bit closer and circle around. And Mr. Spivey closed the curtains and he went to bed. The third night, he sat by the window and he looked out of it and he saw the ghost again come when it got good and dark. But this time the ghost went around and around the house and then closer to the house and then closer to the house until it started to tap on his windows. And now he really was frightened. He closed the windows, ran into his bedroom, put the covers over his head. The next morning, Mr. Spivey packed up his wife and his 8 sons and all of his household goods and his animals, and he went down the road towards Minna's house. And when she came out and said, Mr. Spivey, what are you doing? He said, I am leaving. There is a ghost and it is just making a horrible life for me. And I can't do this anymore. I'm leaving right now. Come with me, Minna. You shouldn't be staying here. That ghost is dangerous. Something could happen. But Minnie said, no, this is my home. I don't have anywhere else to go. I will stay here and it'll be okay. And so Mr. Spivey went off to find another place to live. Well, that evening, Minna sat by the fire. It was so warm and she kind of dozed off as she heard a beautiful little tune being played, one note at a time, and then a tap on her shoulder. And there was the broom. And he was all covered in a white paint, which Minna had given him. And Minna said to the broom, you play so nicely. And the broom played more. And that's the story of the widow's broom.
Oh, Meg, that is wonderful. So beautifully told. I love that story. It is great.
It is fun.
What a wonderful broom. And every home should have one. It's just like that.
I agree. Send one to me right away.
Absolutely. All right. Thank you again. That was so good.
Thank
so
you.
I think we should have maybe certainly time for another story before our break. Sharon, would you like to tell your story now?
Well, I could do that.
Okay, great.
Can you hear me? Because I was having some trouble with my sound earlier. Okay. This is an old story, well, from the Depression, so the 30s, and a different time and place. And it's the story of a sad character named Stubby Smith. Now, Stubby was not a tall man, or a very fortunate one. And winter was coming on in the city, and he was cold. He had spent the last night sleeping on a grate in the sidewalk covered with a refrigerator box. And he didn't want to do that again tonight. And so he pondered what would be the best way to get a bed for the night. And he realized that the most likely possibility was to get put in jail. So he determined that he would have himself thrown into jail. And it seemed to him that the best way to do that was to go into a fancy restaurant and order a wonderful meal and then let them know that he didn't have any money. So he headed for Le Chat Noir, but he didn't make it in the door. As he came up, the waiter D signaled to him and pointed to the sign that said, "We reserve the right to refuse service to anyone." And so he turned away and went down to Bob's Burger Barn. And when he got there, he ordered a big double cheeseburger and some French fries and a chocolate milkshake and a big slab of apple pie. And he ate and ate until he was content. And then he said to the waiter, "I don't have any money." And the waiter said, "I'll go get the manager." And off he went. Well, when the waiter came back with the manager, Stubby said, I'm not going to argue. I won't put up a fight. Just call the police. That's fine. I'll wait right here. And the manager said, "Police? That's the last thing I want in my restaurant. Do you see all these people? I don't want all that commotion. I certainly do not want any police in here. You go and don't ever come back." Stubby was really disappointed. How was he going to get arrested? And then he saw the perfect situation. There was a woman all alone looking into the window of a department store and a beat policeman not half a block away. An ideal setup. So he came up behind the woman and he said, "Hey, baby, you want to have some fun with me tonight?" And she said, "Why, sure, honey, your place or mine?" And Stubby went, "Oh, no." And he ran away as fast as he could. That wasn't going to work either. And so, as a desperate man, he realized he had to do a desperate thing. He went into the alley and he found a piece of brick. And he walked to the jewelry store and he heaved that brick through the window. And instantly the alarm went off. And in just a few minutes, the sirens were wailing. And he leaned against the lamppost and waited for them to come and arrest him. And quickly the policeman got here and he said, "Which way did he go? Which way did he go?" And Stubby said, "Who?" And the policeman said, "Well, the man that broke the window of the jewelry store." And Stubby said, "Did it ever occur to you that he might be standing right here?" And the policeman said, "Oh, sure. I'm sure somebody would break into the jewelry store and then just stand still and wait to be arrested. Now, just tell me the truth. Which way did he go?" And Stubby walked off. This was turning out to be a much more difficult project than he had ever expected. And as he walked along on his way out of town, he came to the residential area and he passed a little white church. And inside he heard people singing, "Come unto Jesus, ye heavy laden." And he thought, oh, that's right. I have gone seriously astray. I should not be trying to live this kind of life. First thing tomorrow morning, I am going to straighten up, clean up, and go looking for a real job, like a real person. And just as he said that, he felt a hand on his shoulder and turned, and there was a policeman. And the policeman said, "All right, buddy, what are you doing in this neighborhood?" And Stubby said, "Nothing. I'm not doing anything at all." And the policeman said, "That's what I thought. And it's going to get you 30 days for vagrancy. You're coming with me." And that's the end of that story.
Oh, poor Stubby Smith. Just didn't work out for him.
No.
Not one night, but 30 nights. Thank you, Sharon. It's such a great story. So well told. Thank you. So, shall we take a short break now? Do we want to do announcements first, or shall we have a break and come back and do announcements and the prompt?
Maybe we could tell people what the prompt is and take a break, and I'll stop the recording.
That sounds a great idea. Thank you. So our question this month is, are you a morning or an evening or a night person? So when we come back, we will introduce ourselves and we shall answer the question. So let's take about 5 minutes, maybe come back at about 7:50, and we'll have the question and announcements, and then we have another story or two. Okay, great.
Deal.
Okay, good. Well, we were talking about what's happening in Florida and how hard it is, all up, not only in Florida, of course, but all up that eastern coast there. And so while I was looking for announcements this evening or afternoon, I found that on the SAC website, there are 2 storytelling concerts right now that I believe you can get on as streaming and donate to. They're free, but you can donate to that disaster relief for those areas that have been so hard hit. So just check that out on the SAC website and see, you know, what's going on there. And otherwise, frankly, I didn't find a lot. Do you want to go ahead and finish up announcements that I have, Katie, and then we'll go to the prompt and everything?
Think
The
announcements. And do you have an announcement, Genevieve? I'm sorry.
no, I was just going to say that one of the is it the NSN Storytelling Festival was canceled because of it.
Oh, that's right.
Which one was?
The 2024 NSN, isn't it? The National Storytelling
Really?
Festival. It's right there.
That's in Tennessee, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it's in Jonesboro, and those same people are the ones that are doing the benefit concert. They just
Yeah.
moved it
Yeah.
online.
Oh, okay. Oh my.
And
Well, there are some excellent tellers. It's amazing that
I
list
went
they've
to
got.
I went to the end of the 6th story, the one that's connected with them, and anyway, there's a couple. That one just says donate to any of the ones that you want. These are just recommendations, but they just want people to donate to whatever you feel, just to help.
Yeah, terrible. Okay, good. And then, as I say, I did not really see much else going on with the SAC group, although can somebody tell me what's going on with genre? Because I did not see anything listed.
Vicky's got her hand up.
Do you have an update on that?
Yes. So a couple things. I'd like to make an announcement about our office hours, that we do have this every month. And the thing that is so cool about it is that you can just join us, sign up for a slot, and you have a half an hour to practice your story, ask questions, we'll time it, we'll do whatever. And we always do it the Tuesday before Do Tell, so that would make it the first Tuesday of the month. And you can contact, Meg sends out a request, or you could just ask me and I could send it to you. That's thing number one. Well, let me just admit. And all right, so genre is next Wednesday, the 16th. It's spooky and scary stories.
Okay.
And there's all kinds of people, including oh god, well, I'm there, but there's also an Asian storytelling group that is telling, as well as just an individual. And it sounds like it's going to be a whole lot of fun. So that's a week from tomorrow on the 16th. Starts at 7. And yeah, I'm sure that Shags will send the announcement out. And finally, I'm doing my workshop again, just putting out my squawk about that, the 16th of November. It's a 2-hour workshop on the 16th in the morning, and it's creating your own stories and how to find and create your own stories, and then how to turn them into a tale. Start with the inspiration and work your way up to the end of the story. So that's that. And you can just, I don't know, text me or email me if you're interested. So those are my.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks, Vicki, for clarifying genre and doing that. Katie?
I just have a quick question. Office hours would fall on the election night. So are we changing it to the Monday, the day before, or are we just going to keep it the first Tuesday? And I'm just throwing that out, and we can talk about that at some other time.
I know it's weird. It's a weird time. It's the 5th of November.
So we
Don't
I
you
am
want
not going to be watching
distraction?
the election. Stop it.
No, it just that it kind of drives me nuts. And I'm going to sign up anyway because in November we have Celebration coming up,
Oh, yeah.
and that's on the 12th.
That's the
And we
other
are
thing.
going to do it as we have, yeah. And we're going to be doing it the same way that we've done it the last couple of years. Well, basically since COVID. We're going to do it via Zoom. We're going to do it on our regular swap night, which should be a good night for people to come on and listen. And we have a great lineup, you guys. Thanks to a couple of our ace storytellers of Do Tell, Vicki and Brandon. We have Ben. What
Brother
is it?
Ben Tucker.
Ben Tucker. And we have Alicia Redis are going to be our guests. And then we will have our Do Tell people, Brandon, Vicki, Sharon, and myself are signed up at this point. So it will be I think it's going to be a really fun celebration, 7 to 9 o'clock. And we hope everybody will be coming. And we will be having some flyers and that type of thing. If you are interested in receiving some of those once we get them all printed up, just send me a quick email and we can get those to you. If you want to take them, give them to your friends. Also, we'll have a little, we're going to have an email, what would you call it, an email blast that you can send out to your friends and your family and just get them excited about Celebration. So that's coming up so I'm going to sign up because I'm going to need to practice my story with you, girl.
It's okay.
For
I'll
office
be there.
hours.
And to anybody who wants
okay.
to just sign up. Also, we have a live flyer that you can send out so that people can just push on it and and it links right to Celebration. So we have that too.
Yeah. So that's in place.
A lot of announcements. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's it though, right?
So.
Anybody else? Okay.
Any more?
Then we get to talk about our question.
Okay. So the question is, are you a morning or a night person? And so if you say your name and where you're from, and I shall begin. So hi, my name is Katie Mangan and I come from Santa Rosa, and I'm a morning person and I love the mornings, and it doesn't matter how early it is, and I wake up. and sometimes I get up. And this morning I got up early enough to do a 6:15 yoga class and then went for a 2-mile walk. So that's what I do. Meg, how about you?
That starts the day off with a bang, girl. Well, I used to be a night person, probably like most of us when I was in my younger years, and then I had children. So I don't know about you, but when you got kids, they get you up early. And so then, and I had a job and, I had to do that. And so for years and years and years, I had to get up and I had to give up my nighttime ways. And so now I'm a morning person, and it has been a really wonderful change, to be honest with you, because you see the sun coming up, the light is so beautiful early in the morning. You go outside, and especially this time of the year, it's the only time to get out there and water your garden and just enjoy the coolness and the freshness of the air. And actually, you don't get that at night. So I'm a morning person now.
Genevieve, are you a morning or an evening person?
You're muted, Jen.
I should have known when I was in grammar school, and somewhere like in 3rd or 4th grade, I think it was, and our teacher, the nun, asked us what time we went to bed. And everybody was saying 8, 8:30, so 7:30. And so she said, how about 9? And 10, okay. And right as Johnny Carson was coming on, I was getting to bed. And I come from a Latino family, so we run things late and we run things long. And if you're going to be having dinner, you're not just going to have dinner and fly. You're going to chat and talk. And anyway, and then everybody's going to do the dishes, and then you're going to do whatever. But I still am, and I'm surprised. And I've tried to become a morning person. Fortunately, now that I don't have to get to work, I get up somewhere between 7 and 7:40, but I go to sleep between 12 and 2.
Wow.
But I find that nighttime is a creative space for me. And more than anything, nighttime sets me up for that time before I get out of bed, which is my more creative time. But anyway, I'm surprised. I've tried to change it. I just can't do it. I love it. It's so quiet. I mean, people see that in the morning. It's very quiet. But that's it. Woo, woo.
Thank you. Gay, are you a morning or an evening person? Do you want to?
Yeah, I had I've kind of adapted the way Meg was saying. I used to be a lot more at night, but then with work and kids and everything, it's kind of become more of but I kind of have a tendency to be more the way Genevieve is, but I have adapted. So I'm not really sure if I'm just adapting, but I'm less of a night person.
Sharon, what about you?
Sharon?
Oh, did you say me?
Yeah.
I'm not sure now. I've been both at different times. In college, I was a night person. With little kids, I was a morning person, but now it's very strange. I am tired and go to bed early, and then I wake up about 1 or 2, and I could just lay there and wrestle, but I usually get up and spend an hour or 2 doing something that I like. And I think, I'm not sure if that makes me a morning person or a middle of the night person, but I kind of like that time. I like feeling like the whole world is asleep except for me. I think I own the night. I am only the one up here, so I enjoy that.
That is cool. I think you're a middle of the night person. Wow. When I wake up at that time, I'll think of you. Maybe I'll send you a text or something. That's cool. Renu, what are you? Morning or night?
Well, I've always been a morning person right from childhood. And I'm still a morning person. I love it. I wake up really early, sometimes at 3 in the morning. I love the quietness, the niceness, and then watching the sunrise. I go for a walk in the mornings around 5:15 in the morning. So I get to see the sunrise every single morning at the beach. I live very close to the beach and I enjoy the morning time. I get to do so many things in my most creative time.
Thank you. Rose, what are you, a morning or a night person?
Well, I'm kind of both. I like getting up in the morning and getting going and doing things. And I like staying up late at night and sharing time with my family and whatever. But I can't do it both. I can't burn the candle at both ends. I have to make a choice.
Mhm.
And sometimes I'm up in the middle of the night with leg pains and not able to sleep. And then I have a couple of quiet hours for myself. So I can be a middle of the night person too, but then I have to compensate. So I kind of compromised. I kind of a late morning person, while all of my family who are night people are still asleep. I have that quiet time. If I'm up early enough, like about 8, my front porch shades my kitchen window. And at 8 o'clock is the only time that the sunlight comes through that window and hits all of my crystals in the window. And I have rainbows dancing in my kitchen. So I love it if I'm up at 8 o'clock in the morning when I can see rainbows dancing in my kitchen. Because I have one that's on a solar spinner and it spins around. So those rainbows just dance across the kitchen. So that's one of the things that I enjoy if I'm up early enough.
Where are you, Rose? Where do you live?
Livermore, California.
Oh,
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So our next,
One of the hottest days and the coldest days I spent in the last couple of years were in Livermore. I went to retreats at 2 different times of the year, and it was bitterly cold, and the next time it was terribly hot.
When we left Utah to come to California, my husband had a job. We looked at the closest big city to see what the weather was going to be. Looked great. And then we got to Livermore. And what we did not realize is that there was that mountain range, and that looking at San Francisco did not tell us what Livermore was going to be like. We should have looked at the Central Valley. So coming to Livermore was a heat shock.
hey, so Renu, are you ready to tell your story? Perfect. Thank you. You're
Chal
muted.
meri gori, chal chal chal, chal meri neelu, chal chal chal, घास चरने chal chal chal, chal meri neelu, chal meri gori. Pinya was driving the 2 cows out to pasture, right there in the meadow, in the middle of the forest. She lived high up in the Himalayas, in the Garhwal district, where there were lots and lots of mountains and steep valleys and the forests. But Pinya was not scared. She had been born and raised up there. She was a 10-year-old child, wearing a pretty little frock, fair of face, rosy-cheeked, bright black eyes, and she loved taking the cows out to pasture. That was her job. And the cows loved having Dinya take them out, because she always sang to them, she spoke to them, and she let them wander as they pleased. She always knew where they were, because they wore those pretty little cowbells round their necks. And as she walked and sang and danced, the cows walked along slowly. And when they reached the valley, they started to chew on the fresh, juicy green grass. Pinya sat for some time under a tree. Then she heard the faint noise of voices. Sometimes people came up from the towns, up into the mountains for a small picnic. And so she went slowly peeping from behind the trees. And there they were sitting there on the grass with some bed sheets spread around. They had lots and lots of yummy looking food. Her mouth watered and her stomach rumbled. But her eyes were soon caught by a beautiful blue umbrella. It was a bright blue with some pale pink flowers painted on it. It was actually a parasol and not at all an umbrella, with beautiful little frills all around it. It had been opened and kept next to a lady who was sitting there. Pinya couldn't take her eyes off that umbrella. Of course, she'd seen umbrellas. Her mother had a big black one, very utilitarian. But Pinya didn't like it. This one, she just couldn't take her eyes off. It was magical. She stood there and gazed, and before she knew it, her feet started to move and she came out from behind the trees. And that's when the people saw her. There were two couples, two ladies and two men. And one of the women, the younger one, pointed out and said, look, there's one of them, one of these little girls. Isn't she pretty? Ah, but look at her clothes, so dirty and torn. And she doesn't wear chappals. She doesn't wear slippers. How does she manage? And then one of them saw that Pinya was wearing a leopard's claw on a black robe. Wow, isn't that a leopard's claw? I want it, said the younger one. The man turned to her and said, come on, that's hers. You know, these village people, they love to wear it. They think it wards off evil. I want it, said the woman. But Binya's eyes were on the umbrella. Hey girl, come here. I'll give you 5 rupees for that thing you're wearing around your neck. But Binya didn't even look at her. Her eyes were still stuck on that umbrella. I'll give you 10 rupees then, said the lady, quite irritated with Binya's lack of interest. Binya turned and looked at her for a moment and shook her head and then went back to looking at the umbrella. The man saw that Binya was looking at the umbrella and said, perhaps she wants the umbrella. The one said, what? No, I'm not giving my umbrella. But then you want the leopard's claw, don't you? He said. Okay. She picked up the umbrella and held it out to Binya. Binya came forward, eyes lit up, and she took the umbrella, took off her chain and gave it to the woman. The woman looked at it and immediately wore it. Binya walked away as though in a daze, holding that umbrella, looking at it, not believing that it was hers. She walked and went back to where the cows were. She placed the umbrella next to her and gazed at it. After some time, she fell asleep. And just then, a breeze started to blow. The umbrella shook. Binya continued to sleep. The breeze became stronger and the umbrella sort of wavered, became stronger still. And soon the umbrella was away, flapping with the wind. Binya continued to sleep. Suddenly she woke up because there was a noise. And she saw the umbrella there running away from her. Stop, she cried and ran after it, not bothering that there were stones and pebbles and the path was pretty steep, but she was a mountain girl and that didn't bother her. She skipped and waved and jumped and ran, but just as she reached the umbrella, it would move again. The wind was kind of playing a game with Binya. Every time the umbrella came to a stop, Binya would race towards it and then the wind would pick it up and move it further away. And as it moved, Binya ran after it. And suddenly it was there, teetering just at the end of the cliff. Yes, said, stop! And just as she was about to grasp it, the wind blew again and it went over the side. Binya lay down on her stomach and peeped over the mountain. And the umbrella had fallen right down onto a tree which was jutting out of the mountain. It was there, and Binya looked at it. She was a mountain girl, and she slowly made her way down, and went on to the top of the tree. Suddenly, she looked down and she saw that deep down the chasm, if she fell, there was no way she could be alive. She refused to look at it anymore. She just kept her gaze fixed on that umbrella and moved slowly, gently. Finally, she got the handle of the umbrella. She moved backwards, climbed onto the cliff again, and then was soon back like a mountain goat. She gazed and gazed at the umbrella. I nearly lost you, but then she opened her eyes. Oh no, 2 little tears were there on the umbrella. Never mind, it still looked as beautiful as ever. She went back. She never ever folded it. She went back with the umbrella, called out to the cows, Neelu, Gori. And the cows actually listened to her. They started following her and she went back all the way home. By then it was almost evening. When she reached home, her mother looked at her and said, where did you get that umbrella? She said, Ma, one lady from the city, she gave it to me in exchange for my leopard's claw. But Binya, the leopard's claw will bring you luck. Oh, I love this umbrella, Mama, I love this umbrella. How did it tear? She asked. Well, it flew away from me and now it's torn, Mama, do something. So mother took out her needle and thread and sewed it. Though it had these 2 patches, umbrella still looked so beautiful in Binya's eyes. Every day she went out, she would carry that umbrella. Never ever did she fold it. All the children gasped and admired that umbrella. How beautiful! May I hold it, please? And she would give it. If she was in a good mood, she would give it to one of the children. They would hold it for a couple of minutes and immediately she would take it back. Binya loved that umbrella. Her older brother, Biju, also wanted to hold it, but she refused to give it to him. He was lucky he went to school every day. Girls never were sent to school. They were asked to help their mother around the house or out in the fields. It's only during the time when it was time for sowing seeds that Biju actually helped out, planting the seeds and looking after them till they started to grow out of the ground. They were not rich. They were very, very poor, but they managed somehow to grow their own food. And sometimes when the cows gave some extra milk, their mother would sell it to the other villagers. And that's how they managed their lives. They'd lost their father when Binya was about 2 years old. She didn't even know exactly how old she was. It's only when her mother said, "You were born when the moon turned blue one night." And somehow Binya thought perhaps that was 10 years ago. And so the days went on. Binya took the umbrella wherever she went. She wished and wished that it would rain so that she could hold that umbrella and it would shelter her. But it didn't rain. Now, in that village, high, high up there in the mountains, there was a little shop. And this belonged to somebody called Ram Barosa. He had these little knickknacks in his shop, some chocolates, some candy, some sweets, some little trinkets that people would sometimes come and buy from him. And of course, he always served hot chai, tea, that sometimes when buses came in with loads of tourists, they would stop there for a cup of tea. That man saw the umbrella and he loved it. He fell in love with it and he thought, I, Ram Barosa, must have that umbrella. So he called Binya one day and he said, "Sell me that umbrella. I shall give you 5 rupees for it." She shook her head. 10 rupees? It's got 2 tears in it, 2 patches. I'll give you 10, 12 rupees. "I will not give my umbrella," said Binya very, very firmly. Ram Barosa wanted it even more now that she was refusing to give it to him. He wished and wished and wished for it. Every time he saw it, he would say, and turn his head away. The days went on and soon it became winter. Now Ram Barosa needed somebody to help him with the shop. He offered the job to Biju, but Biju refused. "I have schoolwork," he said. "I will not work here." Then he tried to entice them into getting into debt. He said, "Come, buy some chocolate. I will give it to you. Don't worry, I'll put it in your account," he said Biju. Biju said no. He had realized that Ram Barosa was very clever. He would get all the children into debt and then take away all the things that they loved. Sometimes it would be a small hammer that one of the children would have made, or sometimes a keychain or something or the other that the children really loved. And he would take all those things away and keep them in his shop. So Biju was smart. He said, "No, I don't want your chocolates." He tried offering something to Binya and she said, "No, I don't want it." And so Ram Barosa was stuck. What do I do? One day he found a boy from another village, came to his shop, was looking for a job. "Okay, you can work for me. Here, do this work, do that work." He gave him lots of things to do. And one day this boy noticed that Ram Barosa's gaze was fixed on the blue umbrella. He said, "What are you looking at?" Ram Barosa said, "That umbrella. Oh, I want it." "You want an umbrella? What are you going to do with it? You never ever go out of the shop." "What do you want?" "I just want it. I love it." "You want it. Will you give me 3 rupees if I steal it for you?" "Steal? You're going to steal? What a bad boy you are. Such a bad boy." "I'll give you 2 rupees if you want." 3 rupees is what I asked for." Okay, go." Bad boy. And the boy went off. And just then Binya went by, holding her umbrella. She was never ever without her umbrella. And the boy started following her. Binya, as usual, had let the cows wander away into the pasture. And she was walking around singing to herself, la, 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 la. And the boy followed her wherever she went, hiding himself behind trees, bushes, careful not to allow her to see him. He was studying in the same school as Biju was. And if Biju caught him, he would be in big trouble. Binya continued to walk. And soon she came to a place, put the umbrella down. And so she saw some butterflies. Wow, butterflies. She started chasing after them. This was the chance he was waiting for. He rushed, grabbed the umbrella and ran. Binya saw him. "What? My umbrella!" She started running after him. And they ran. And this boy made the mistake of running downhill. He had long legs, but running downhill, Binya was smarter than him. She didn't take the direct route. She just jumped onto the mountain, jumped over rocks and boulders and started chasing. She was almost catching him. And suddenly he ran even faster towards the stream. Just then, Biju was coming back from school. He was coming upstream and she shouted out to him, "Biju, look, that boy has stolen my umbrella." So Biju saw the boy, started chasing him. Both of them fell into the stream. They started punching and pinching and shoving at each other. And the umbrella went flying away. down into the stream, downwards, downward, down the mountain. Binya saw this and she started chasing the umbrella. Chased it, she jumped into the water, started swimming. Finally, she got hold of it. Of course, by now, the umbrella was torn in several places. The handle was almost cracked, but she didn't care. It was a beautiful, beautiful umbrella. She got it back, and by then, Biju had overpowered the boy. He had punched him so hard, the boy was breathless. What were you doing with my sister's umbrella? Biju asked. Well, that Ram Bharosa wanted it. I was stealing it for him. He offered me 3 rupees to get it for him. Ram Bharosa? Said Biju, shocked. Soon the news was around the village. Everybody was angry with Ram Bharosa. An old man like him, cheating a little girl trying to steal her umbrella? How could he? People stopped coming to the shop. But Ram Bharosa now had no money at all. He had enough savings, but he didn't want to touch his savings. Nobody came to Ram Bharosa's shop. Not a child, not an adult, nobody at all. And every day he just sat like this, outside his shop. No business. And every time Binya went past the shop, she felt sad and sorry, as though she felt it was my fault. It's my umbrella, but he wanted it too. And one day, she walked into the shop. She said, can I have a chocolate, please? And Ram Bharosa looked at her suspiciously. What was she trying to do? Was she mocking him? She handed over a coin. He looked at it. Was she trying to cheat him? He bit into it. No, it was a real coin. He gave her the chocolate. And she left. Then he noticed she had left her umbrella there. For a minute, he was tempted. He looked at it, kept it aside, and then picked it up and ran behind Binya. Binya, Binya, he shouted. She turned. You left your umbrella. No, I don't want it. It's yours. Keep it, she said. Are you sure? Yes, keep it. And so he took it back to his shop. We sat there for a moment thinking. And that night, it rained. And he could hear something scrabbling up on his roof. He had a little room right next to his shop. That's where he slept. In the morning, he saw that a bear had jumped onto the top of his shop and eaten up the big pumpkin that had been growing there. But when he looked closely, he saw that the bear had left one of his claws behind. He picked up the claw and looked at it. That morning, he took the bus and went down to the village, down to the biggest town. He went to a silversmith and gave him the claw and said, do you have a chain for this? Can you make a pendant? And the man agreed. Ram Bharosa waited till the man had fitted a small silver ring on that bear's claw and then fitted a small silver chain onto it. Ram Bharosa took it, paid the money, and went back to home. The next morning, when he saw Binya, he called her over. Binya, come here. So Binya went to him, wondering what he wanted. He handed out the silver chain to her and said, this is yours, keep it. She looked at it. Really? For me? Yes, for you. And so she put it on. And it looked really, really nice on her. Thank you, she said. And off she went. Binya was happy. And so was Ram Bharosa. Thank you. That's the end of the story.
That's such a beautiful story, Renu. Thank you. I just love that umbrella, that blue umbrella.
This is actually, it's by Ruskin Bond.
Oh,
The blue umbrella.
beautiful. Thank you so much. Beautiful.
You're welcome.
Genevieve, are you ready to tell us a story?
I was just saying, thank you, Renu. Okay, I unmuted myself. There. Hi. That was fantastic. I have to just add something. Every time that I heard you talk about the umbrella, it reminded me of when I was in India many, many years ago. And the umbrellas then were very thick fabric, very heavy, and a friend of mine who was in her late 80s would carry her heavy umbrella around all the time. It was her walking stick. And then when the monsoons came, it was her umbrella. And when I left, I left everything that I could and gave it to my rickshaw wala, my rickshaw driver, including a very lightweight American umbrella. And he loved it. But I'm not convinced that it withstood the monsoons the next year. Okay. Sometimes when we love somebody and we share our lives with them, even if you know that the period of time that you are given to spend with them may not be long, you experience events that transcend the time that you're together. My husband used to, oh gosh, sorry. There's an animal that comes by. It's probably a skunk. I'm going to try to pick him up and see if I can silence him. Hold on. Not the skunk, my dog. Anyway, my husband used to have a guide dog, but I never met that guide dog because he had gone over the Rainbow Bridge before I met my husband. I always asked Don, if you ever want a dog, let me know. And he would say, you know what? It will be more work for you. Because even though a guide dog is always taken care of by the person that he is paired with, he knew that given his own condition, I would ultimately have to do a lot of the work myself. But one day he came to me sheepishly and said, you know what, I was thinking about your offer and I'd like to accept it. This was years after we'd gotten married. And so we looked on Pet Finder and we selected a dog. And on the next day, I took the time off of work. I called in sick because the person who was fostering the dog said, well, you know, I've got another family that's interested in this dog, but I think you'd be a better match. So if you can come before Saturday, I'll show him. And if it's a better match, then I'll give you preference. And so we went across the Bay Bridge and we met this lovely little thing. So cute. It was called a mini Sheltie mix. And there is no such thing in the AKC, American Kennel Association, as a mini Sheltie mix, but all bets would be that he's part Corgi, probably his mom, and part Sheltie, probably his daddy. And he is 18 pounds and he has little feet and a long swishy tail and beautiful button eyes. And he's very, very sweet. My husband was had hoped that Chipper would play games, that he would be able to toss the ball at him and things like that. And maybe he'd be able to guide him to the mailbox. But that was not Chipper's style. Chipper doesn't play. He doesn't care for toys. He's a very mellow fellow. And he ultimately became certified as a Pause for Healing therapy dog. So he has visited people in the hospital. And he would primarily be Don's companion. In fact, if Don was having a diabetic reaction, I might find Chipper on Don's chest as Don was lying down dealing with this dip in sugar. And by doing so, he would keep Don conscious until he could get himself the sugar if I was not home. So they had a very beautiful, beautiful bond. But a couple of years after we got Chipper, my Don went over what for pets is called the Rainbow Bridge. And I was left with Chipper. Little did I realize how wise Don had been. So many years after I had first offered for him to get a guide dog, to say, Jen, I would like us to get a dog. Is that okay with you? In retrospect, Don wanted a companion, but I believe that given his health situation, he anticipated that the person who would be needing the companion was going to be me. In November, Don will have been gone for 10 years from this particular life. I still feel his presence, but there's something else in the house that reminds me of the love that we shared and how much he cared for me. And that's little Chipper. I did, however, with a little bit of time, begin to kind of take him for granted. Because I'd get wrapped up in writing stories and telling stories and doing this and doing that and boom, 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 boom. Until a dear mutual friend of ours came to visit. And before she left, she wrote on a little index card, which I have on my refrigerator, as if it were Chipper writing it. Please pay attention to me. Paw print. And I have. So since she left, I've made it a point to take Chipper on walks and care for him and love on him and this and that and this and that. And if you're going to have some time to spend with me, I'm going to find a way to bring him with us. But if not, I just tell him, take care of the house, I'll be right back. And he's there waiting for me when I return. A week ago Sunday, I took him with me to the Bishop's Ranch, where I go to the Chapel of St. George for Episcopalian Mass. After Mass, we go to the refectory, the little cafeteria there, and we have some socializing, some sharing. And then comes Chipper's favorite time, because Chipper can't be inside the refectory. Chipper's favorite time is going for a walk on the beautiful property of the ranch. I have always kept Chipper on a leash, except if he's in an enclosed area, an area that I feel is safe. So I was walking as normal with him on my leash, and he was sniffing and sniffing. And in the ranch, there's a lot of wildlife. There's coyotes, there's all sorts of birds, birds of prey, regular birds. There's chickens. There used to be chickens. The chickens have been eaten by the coyotes, but that's another story. And there's snakes, and there's squirrels and cats. So I'm walking along, and he's really sniffing a lot because something's been around there, and he is just fascinated. Sniff, 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 sniff. But I've got him on the leash. And then at one point, we come in front of one of the cabins, cabin number 4, and there's some dirt on the side of the cabin, so I let him sniff. And then he begins to get close to the bottom of the wooden boards where the dirt has dropped down, and there's this little opening, and I kind of yank him away and don't want him to get too close because I'm a real helicopter dog mom. And then I say, Jen, don't be so controlling. Remember, let him have a good life. So I release the leash a little bit, and I let him sniff a little bit. He can't get too far in. His nose won't go far into that little hole. And I turn away, and then I hear, Chipper had yelped. What would it be? Out into the sidewalk next to me. He was only about 2 feet away anyway. And he started just kind of, I didn't know if it was his paw or his little muzzle. And I saw a black spot here. I thought, wait a minute, I thought the mole you had, Chipper, was on the other side, but I guess I haven't paid attention. You've got a mole on this side. No, I couldn't figure it out, but with a short passage of time, his muzzle began to swell. I talked to the staff there, and they said, well, maybe it's a wasp because there's not 2 bites. If it had been a snake, it would have been 2 fang marks. So I dashed home and I consulted Google Vets. And I started treating him for a possible wasp bite. And as I gave him some Benadryl, my hand wiped across, and there was some brown liquid. I thought, wait a minute, this isn't blood. Is it a snake? How could it be a snake? It's not bloody. I call the vets, and they say, probably snake bite, bring him in. And by the time I got there, the second fang bite had begun to bleed. Indeed. The vets actually told me this was the 5th case of rattlesnake bite they had had this season. This was my companion. I hadn't taken care of him. I was trying to let him have a good... I'm a bad mom. No, you did your best. So the vets were wonderful. The staff was caring. It was a Sunday. They had the talk with me that everybody who goes into an ER has at the end of the event, letting me know that it was going to be somewhere between $2,500 and $4,000. He was going to have to stay overnight and possibly have 3 courses of anti-venom. But the nice thing about a 24/7 hospital is you can call anytime and find out how your dog is. So not being able to sleep that night, I called at 12:30. You know, I'm a night owl. And the vet said, you know what? He's showing signs that he'll only need 1 anti-venom regimen. But before I had left, I had asked if they would bring him back out. He was already doped up. He was as limp as a rag doll. His eyes were super dilated. And he was so sweet, but his little muzzle was super, super, super swollen. That night, I kept waiting for him to stir. I kept waiting for him to do that little snore that some dogs do. I kept watching my feet to make sure that they didn't kick him under the covers. But there was nothing there. Wow. Wow. I don't have children. And I can't imagine how those of you who have children manage. But I can tell you, I could feel for all of those parents of little helpless beings that night. On the next day, I called and I was able to pick him up by noon. He was super swollen. He was super tipsy. He could barely negotiate the stairs. But he was home. Over the last week, he's gotten better gradually. Little by little, the swelling went down. He's able to get up and go around here and there, able to go on walks. He eats, he poops, he pees. And you know what? Last night, I knew he was back because his tail began to swish. Now, I've mentioned children a few times before, and we mentioned it when we were having our little break. And it turns out that I don't have any children, but somehow a number of readings have come to me recently by women who don't have children. I highly recommend Ann Patchett's recent memoir, where she treats this subject with great aplomb. But you know who else in the author community, since we're such storytellers, didn't have children? Edith Wharton. And as I'm here and I see my little guard dog barking at whatever might be in the back, and now I look at him tucked up. And for now, back to health. I know why she wrote Edith Wharton. My little dog, a heartbeat at my feet.
That is such a beautiful story about your sweet, sweet dog. And I just love all the stories that you tell about Chippa. That is just gorgeous. And just the way your tone and how you tell it to us, just, we were right there with you, sitting.
Thank you.
No, thank you so much. That's glorious. Perfect. Well, are there any more stories? This has just been a wonderful evening. Shall we have everybody up in the gallery, Vicky? So we can see each other and
Yeah, let me do that. Hold on.
Oops. Hold on a second.
There we go.
yeah.
Sweet. Pretty much all of us who are left.
Yeah.
We don't need a gallery.
Yeah, yes, yes, yes. Well, it's just been a wonderful evening. Thank you so much.
Beautiful stories, really.
It's
Everyone.
amazing.
Yeah.
So sweet. Where's Brandon?
He's at school, at a school event.
I saw one of his students. I'll be right back. I saw one of his students perform in a play. One of the students that was in the storytelling event at his school. She was in a play called The Germans Upstairs.
Wow.
Written by a local playwright and performed at the Raven. It was really good.
Wow.
She had one of the key
That's
roles.
nice.
Oh,
Yeah, the young woman. It was, I don't know. She's very dramatic. She's very good.
Well, Brandon is a great teacher. I'm sure that the student learned a lot about storytelling and being dramatic and acting from just his classes. So that's wonderful. Yeah. Yeah. I want to say, hey, Rose, I'm so glad you joined us today. I hope you will come
Thank you, Wendy.
back. Your story was so much fun. And so it was really great. Is this the first time you've been on our swap?
I came last month and just
Oh, okay.
and I've been looking for a storytelling community. We used to have one in Livermore, but we don't now.
Oh,
When I found Do Tell,
Yeah.
I thought this would fill a need.
oh,
It-
we love you.
Also
Absolutely.
give me an entree to being able to apply for the storytelling genre storytelling.
Oh, yay.
Because
Yeah,
I investigated
definitely.
that, and they said I had to have a recommendation from my group, and I said, but I don't have a group. And I thought, okay, that means you need to find a group.
now you do.
Yes, yes.
Now,
Yeah.
is Telebration open to people for story, or have you already got all your storytellers you need for Telebration?
Celebration is usually a concert rather than a swap. So yeah, so we have a specific lineup, and it grows out. I don't know if you're familiar with Telebration, but it grows out of a national, actually worldwide movement to tell stories supposedly on the same day all over the world, but as it's kind of matured, I guess people have theirs at different times, but there will be celebrations everywhere during November. So you can really get your storytelling fix. But yeah, yeah, just really great to have you. And I'm so glad. And yes, we will sponsor you if you wish.
Yes.
And who does she contact for that? Vicky, is it you? Yeah.
And
So
choose what genre you would like and see the calendar that is
Right.
put out by SAC.
Okay, so Vicky, what is your email address?
Okay, I'm going to put it in the chat
Okay.
in just a minute.
Gay, we didn't hear from you tonight.
who?
Gay.
Okay.
I'm a good audience.
You are a good audience,
Thanks.
but you're a good teller. Don't sell yourself short. Yes, ma'am. Love to hear when you do. It's always like, oh, good.
And if you
So
just
that's
want to
wonderful.
try something out at office hours, we're open.
Yeah,
Well,
yeah,
I
yeah.
was planning on that. I have a Thanksgiving story I'm working on called One is Enough.
Oh,
Ooh.
okay.
Ooh.
It is.
Yeah.
It sounds great.
Yeah, I have a storytelling. I tell stories at the Oakland Temple Visitor Center every second Saturday of the month.
Ah,
Okay.
Mm.
And then I'm going in the middle of the first of the month, I'm going to Idaho, where I have two great granddaughters, and I've not been into their schools. This is something that through the years I have gone into my grandchildren's schools telling stories. They think it's cool. They tell their friends that they have a grandmother who's a famous storyteller, and I let them get away with saying that.
Oh, what a wonderful thing for them.
yeah.
God, that's great.
And I've got these two great granddaughters who haven't had me into their schools yet. So I'm looking forward to that, and I'm thinking that this story One is Enough. It's a good Thanksgiving story.
Oh, yeah.
Did you
Oh.
start telling stories long ago?
I have been telling stories as a volunteer. I started like 48 years ago, and 33 years ago I went professional.
No wonder. No wonder. Yeah.
Well,
Love
I have
it.
to speak from experience that those grandchildren are going to remember you, and they're going to remember your stories, and they're going to tell them to their own children. So
Yes.
it's a beautiful thing that you're doing. It really
You have
is.
your mother's legacy, Meg.
Yeah.
Stories are remembered.
I know,
I have 6
absolutely,
children. I have 7
absolutely.
children. And
Oh.
when my youngest child was in kindergarten, we left the school grounds and we were watching. There was construction going on, and every day we would stop to see what's going on. And this young man hauled across, and he says, Mrs. Owens, he says, I remember you. He says, you told stories when I was in kindergarten, and they were good stories, and I remember them. And that's the best compliment that you can get as a storyteller, is to have somebody. I mean, I didn't
Absolutely.
recognize him, but he recognized me.
Wow.
Yep.
Cool.
Yeah.
Is there a particular kind of story that you like most?
My favorite story is the one I'm telling right now. I tell personal stories, I tell family history stories, I tell tall tales. And
We love tall tales. Just a
I'll-
little hint.
Actually,
Oh,
there
okay.
is a genre tall tale in January. I'm just saying.
I have a tall tale that I wrote myself about the I can't even remember her name is Mindy O'Dare, who was tall and
Minnie
she's in
O'Dare.
San Francisco and she was, I mean, she could stop the earthquakes from happening and she
Oh, great.
and she stops and then she reaches the point when she says, okay, let it rumble.
Uh, we may have to nominate you.
Yes, yes,
I may have to bring
definitely.
that. I may have to bring that when I wrote it, but I've never told that particular story. But I may have to bring it to the workshop and work on it. And
Yeah. Mhm, mhm,
because I love the tall tales that have been passed down, and then I love the twists that you get. Sally Ann Thunder and Lightning
absolutely.
Whirlwind Crockett, which are somebody
Yeah.
made her up.
Yeah. That's great. Well, it does sound like you're a great candidate for genre because they do all different kinds, of stories, and so being versatile helps you to get on there and have some fun. So that's good.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
And Katie,
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to hearing from you soon again.
Yes. Yes.
I think Katie,
Story, but it's not.
Katie, you are December genre.
I am, yes.
And what's that gonna be?
I think it's a sacred.
Sacred.
Sacred Stories, that's right, of course, December, yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That'd
I
be
have
nice.
stories that would fit there too.
Mhm.
Sounds like you've got
Great.
quite a lot.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for over 10 years,
Mm.
on the Oakland Temple grounds in South.
What is Oakland Temple Grounds?
Okay, the LDS Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, there is a visitor center there.
Oh,
And every
Oh.
year from the 1st of December through the end of December, there's something going on Temple Hill. We call it all the time. And I have been a storyteller. I brought storytelling to Temple Hill. I've been there for 10 years now, over 10 years, telling stories. Usually they want different performers, different years, but I get to come back every year because they said they can't find anybody else.
Is that the temple that's that beautiful building you see up on the hills in Oakland?
Yes, that is.
Oh, okay, yeah. That's a landmark, actually.
It is.
you'll have to let
Yeah,
us know when you're
beautiful.
telling again, and maybe we'll make an excursion over there, maybe do a picnic again, like you guys.
December
That would
the
always be
9th,
fun.
6 o'clock and 7 o'clock. I just got my
Oh,
booking confirmation
nice.
today. So
December 9th?
December the 9th, 6 o'clock
Okay.
and 7 o'clock.
Oh,
And-
2 different times.
Yes, and there'll be
Wow.
2 different sets of stories. I do
Ah,
not duplicate my stories. There'll be 2 separate performances. So
Wow. Great. Great. Lots of opportunities to have storytelling fun. I love it.
yes.
Guys, my ear pods are just about ready to give up the ghost. So I am going to wish you all a wonderful good night. And thank you so much for being here.